James Ernest of the Grueling Truth here on MMA Ground and Pound with Zach Freeman. Zach, tell us, how are you an Alter Boy?
It's funny. I do get that question quite often, and it kind of encompasses more than just one story. But the whole way it kind of all went down was I was fighting as an amateur, and I was weighing in for a fight. And I was just sitting there minding my own business by myself, and one of the local ring announcers, he's announced for King of the Cage and some other promotions like Shamrock, giving a lot of pro fighters their nicknames. He actually kind of walked by me. He didn't know me too well, and he just said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm weighing in to fight. And he said, you fight? And he kind of just had this look of surprise. I was like, yes. And he's like, you look more like an altar boy than a fighter. So I kind of cracked up laughing, and he's like, man, that's a good nickname. You should roll with that. And I was like, well, it's kind of funny because I actually grew up in Catholic school, and I was an altar boy. But I wasn't too hot on the name, so I didn't really say, oh, yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, call me that. But the next night I walked out to the fight, and he decided he's going to call me Alter Boy. And I remember half the crowd just kind of cracking up laughing at that alone, that nickname. So I knew I had to go out and perform, and I did. I got a TKO win in a minute and a half or something like that against a military veteran. He was a Marine, pretty tough guy. But also, when I meet people, the look on their face is like, wow, you fight? I guess I try to carry myself professionally in the business world, so I like to actually get to know people before they even find out I'm a fighter, because I feel like if people find out right away, they're a little more on guard, they don't really know what to think. But I love when people get to know me, and then they find out after a month or two of knowing me, on some way they find out that I fight, and they're just in awe. They're like, I cannot believe this. The way you carry yourself, the way you talk, you just don't come off as someone who competes in the cage. So I kind of ran with that nickname because it kind of encompasses the way I carry myself and encompasses some of my background, being an altar boy. And it's kind of funny and catchy. So it's not like one of those nicknames that kind of rolls, off the tongue, and it's just kind of normal, like Jake the Snake, or some of the nicknames that are pretty worn out. This one is not so much. So it's unique, and I'll just roll with it.
I know what you mean, all the stereotypes and stigmas that go with the MMA organizations and that kind of thing. So do you feel that that has improved over time? Because, I understand early on when they had Tank Abbott and those type of guys that, people associated it a certain way. But fortunately, it does, like you said, as being a professional, it does seem, there are more of you out there nowadays than there used to be.
No, I'd have to say, in my opinion, that the normal Joe off the street, the normal Joe or Jane, who doesn't know much about it, they've at least heard of it now. Mm-hmm. And there is typically a little bit more just respect and understanding than it just being a cage and being a fighter, a cage fighter. So, like, I was at a golf tournament yesterday with some, new business colleagues that I had just met that day, and they'd asked me why I wasn't drinking, and I explained I'm a professional fighter, and they thought it was awesome, and it wasn't, it didn't come off like I'm like this tough guy or anything like that. They said that even the way I explained it, it was, that I seemed like I have humility and not like a violent person or anything. And to go off that, I think any human being has the capability to be violent. I think it's different human beings have different thresholds of what it takes to get to that point. Some people, they're very quiet and they're very resilient to patience or to anger. They're resilient to anger. But where some people just have a short fuse. But at the end of the day, we're all animals, and I think that if you put push anyone to that certain point, they can get angry or upset. So I think a lot of times, like a John Copenhaver, I think it was, there's stories like his and Christy Mack or whatever it is, and that kind of put a bad, reputation on fighters. But at the same, you have people in church committing crimes, and it doesn't matter where you go. There's bad people everywhere you go. It's not a racial thing. It's not a sexist thing. It's just part of human nature. I don't know how we got off on this subject, but I guess I will get off it now.
No worries, it happens. Shoot, tell us about your last fight and BFC.
So Bellator, I've always held out from trying to sign with Bellator because I wanted to fight for the UFC. As I got older and opportunities slipped by, I fought for a Titan co-main event once, and the winner got signed to the UFC. That was my first loss against Jake Lindsay. So that, I was winning that fight up to the point I got caught with an uppercut, and then I was on shaky legs for about a minute, and he put me away. So hats off to him. I still feel like I am the better fighter, and, maybe a rematch will come down the road one day, but really it's, Bellator has been great. I thought I would hold off for the UFC, but as I got older and realized, hey, there's just as much opportunity in Bellator as there is in UFC, especially with sponsorships and things like that. I went ahead and took the plunge. But I'd say a big factor in that was taking a fight on at Madison Square Garden on pay-per-view on the main card. I couldn't pass that up. So they did tie me to an exclusive deal. Bellator is known for doing non-exclusive contracts. Mine is exclusive, and I'm happy to do that. So far, working with Bellator, they've been amazing. Their staff is awesome. They treat us fighters very well. I was a little disappointed I didn't receive any type of bonus for my finish. You always hear about these locker room bonuses and all that, and quite honest, it's bullshit because I've never got one. So a lot of times they say, oh, these figures don't include this and that, and it's like, well, I felt like that finish I did, just kind of staying on the press conference, I really feel like I kind of not only made a mark, but I really took advantage of that weekend in New York City. And, besides that, everyone's been great. I do feel like, Bellator never even, they showed Pico's knockout of Justin Lin, but they didn't show my finish with Pico. I think you can catch it on their website, but they didn't publish it. So they're still trying to kind of, hide that scar, or how Coker put it, the mulligan, which I wish I had mulligans in fighting, but I didn't purchase those. This is my last go around. That was kind of like, but I was definitely happy for Pico. It said a lot about his character to be able to come off such a rough debut with so much hype around him, and to come back and to finish his opponent like he did. I thought it was awesome, and I thought all it does is raise my stock. One thing I've always done, win or lose in a fight, I always cheered for my past competition. Whether I won, whether I lost to them, I don't care. I'm always cheering for them to win as much as they can. That raises my stock, in my opinion. So, yeah, I thought it was amazing for him to come back the way he did, and that's what makes fighting so beautiful, is that whether you're behind, on the scorecards, there's always that hope. There's always that chance that you can still win. Where in baseball and other sports, you're down 10 rounds, or you're down 30 points, and there's a minute left in the fourth quarter, or you're down 20 points in a basketball game in the second half, and you have 2 minutes left. There's really not that hope that fighting gives you. So there's always that opportunity to win. So I love that about fighting.
Exactly, yeah. You can win the whole thing in one swing, as opposed to, like you said, other sports where they're time restricted and all. It makes it almost impossible. So tell us about the lightweight division. Do you feel that it is currently the most prominent division out there, or are some of the heavier divisions kind of overshadowing them?
Yeah, I think the heavier divisions will always overshadow the lighter divisions. But for anyone to say that they're deeper is quite asinine, in my opinion. There's no doubt, there's no question that lightweight, welterweight divisions, featherweight divisions, they're stacked. The competition is just, it's intense, and you know, it's a lot deeper than any other weight divisions. And the thing too is like it seems like the more you weigh, the more you get paid too. I don't know why that is, but I think that might be somewhat of an issue in mixed martial arts still.
I'm going to blame Shoney's because I think they had it where you used to pay when kids would eat dinner, you get paid a penny a pound for your meal or whatever it was. So I'm thinking that logic is brought into it.
I'm sure it is.
Sorry.
But it doesn't really justify the facts that, hey, whether you're 150 pounds or you're 250 pounds, you're still going out there putting your body and your reputation on the line fully. So that's the great thing about fighting is that there is always an opportunity to win. Mm-hmm. But the hardest part about fighting is that you can be on top 1 second and then just in the pits the next second. You know, in football, if you lose 2 games, it's not the end of the season. Or if you lose 3 baseball games in a row, it doesn't mean you're not going to be able to make the playoffs. So there's a lot more opportunity for losing in other sports and major sports compared to fighting. And fighting, you know, every fight is important. Every round is important. So not only is there, to me, a higher reward because it's so personal, you know. At the end of the day, I get my hand raised, you know. My whole team doesn't stand in the ring and get their hand raised. It becomes very personal. So when you win a football game, everybody wins. But so there's higher risk, but in my opinion, there is higher reward with fighting.
So how'd you get started in fighting?
I was a wrestler since I was 6 years old, and I, of course, took that in high school. I did well. I made it to state as a freshman. I placed as a sophomore. I actually made it to the semis and lost by a point to the 3-time state champ. So then my junior year, all those guys had already graduated. I was ranked first as a junior, first as a senior. Injury kept me out junior year. And then senior year, I, you know, had really put in a lot of work to go into that season. I did the 30-day Jay Robinson camp. I was at Mizzou for a couple weeks training. So I really put in a lot of work to prepare for my senior year of wrestling because I wanted to get a scholarship. And I wanted to be an NCAA Division I wrestler. And unfortunately, I broke my leg in a camping accident. And I thought I had just sprained it. And comes to find out after 2 days of camping, I didn't go to the hospital. I got back in town, went to the hospital. They diagnosed that, hey, you fractured your leg. Went and saw an orthopedist. He recommended that I do surgery, being that I had the wrestling year coming up. So they put a plate and screws in my leg. And when they did, I came down with an infection. Oh. Yeah, so 7 surgeries later, we had realized that not only had antibiotics not been working, they had actually misdiagnosed the culture. So they thought I had a staph infection, MRSA, and they had then found out we actually recultured this, and you have a Pseudomonas infection, which is a dangerous water-based bacterium that causes a lot of people issues, especially organ transplants, things like that. A lot of people come down with Pseudomonas infections, and it can kill them. So after finding out that it had been misdiagnosed, which for the note, I never sued the hospital, so I'm not rich off that. I wish I was, but I'm not. I still work a full-time job. I had about 5 more surgeries, so 12 in total. and my last surgery was Christmas Eve of my senior year, so that was 2001. So after that surgery, luckily, they got me on a good antibiotic. It started working, but then I was on bed rest for several months, pumping tons of antibiotics through my body daily, and just trying to heal up. So I pretty much missed my entire year of high school, my senior year of high school. So I missed out on a scholarship for wrestling. The whole wrestling dream kind of fell apart. And I just had this void, inside that was missing. And I knew it was the fact that I'd worked my whole life at a goal of becoming a Division I champion or an All-American wrestler. And I didn't get really that opportunity. So, fast forward a couple years, I had been through some rough times in my life, made some decisions that weren't the best, just kind of adolescence and always learning things the hard way like most of us do. And kind of just took a look at things in my life, and I just realized that I was missing wrestling and competing, that's what I was made to do. And that's what fulfills me as a person, that makes me happy. So I started kind of looking into different things like boxing or wrestling outside of, there's kind of, there's leagues where you can kind of wrestle, like Leonardwood has the open and anyone can join it. So I was looking to do something like that, but I knew I could get some training in. And I ended up at a gym, and a guy named Cody Sparks said, "Hey man, come check out jiu-jitsu. That's what I've been doing." So I went and did some jiu-jitsu, and I rolled around with a guy who claimed he was a pro fighter. I tapped the guy out like several times. My first time rolling ever, like pulling off arm bars and stuff I'm not even supposed to know. So I was like, man, maybe I kind of have a knack for this stuff. And the guy's like, man, you're really good. You should look into training. So I started training, started boxing, started doing jiu-jitsu, no-gi. And I ended up really falling in love with it and liking it. And I decided to take an amateur fight. I did so and was successful. And after that, I had kind of gotten off that path. Kind of ran into some more issues in my life that required me to step away from doing anything except focusing on myself. And a couple years passed, and I decided to give it another shot and start training, and I really went full force. I spent a year as an AMI, had 4 fights, and immediately just turned pro after 5 amateur fights. So I had 1 amateur fight in 2008. And then I started fighting again in 2010, the end of 2010. Turned pro in 2011. And I guess the story really is just that what got me into fighting was wrestling. And kind of missing the opportunity of going to college and being a champion. That's what sparked me to do jiu-jitsu, which sparked the opportunity to fight. So I'd say that's how I got into fighting. Was just kind of missing that competitive spirit.
Well, with your wrestling background, it sounds like you're definitely in the right organization, because that is one of the nice things that I really do appreciate about Bellator is how they incorporate former wrestlers into their organizations. Like of late, I know they've signed Logan Sorley and Ramir Colton, and yeah, they've been really embracing wrestling as a gateway into MMA. So I think, it sounds like you're doing the right things.
Oh yeah, and that's where the Pico fight, it meant a lot to me, because this is a guy who skipped high school, skipped college. He was such a great wrestler. So really beating him was almost like kind of like winning the Division I national championship in my own eyes. It was like I just finished one of the greatest cadet wrestlers that's been around, So, in my opinion, I kind of fulfilled that void just in that one fight. It took about 16 fights to get that fight, but I took advantage of that weekend and I'm going to make it pay off.
Definitely. And then if you could tell us about Bellator 186 and why we need to check that out with your upcoming fight.
So Bellator 186 will be Penn State University headlined with a title fight between Bader and Linton Vassell. And Ed Ruth is going to be making an appearance. He's a former Penn State wrestler, as well as Phil Davis, who's a former Penn State wrestler. And I will be taking on Sadawad. He's a tested veteran. He's got 3 times as many professional fights as I do. So I feel like, I'm kind of going from one end of the spectrum to the other. Here's this green guy who's going to be the greatest ever, to here's a guy who's battle tested, and we know he's going to throw some heavy hands at you, which I knew Bellator was going to do this. But once again, I feel like they just picked the wrong guy for me. I do think Sadawad is very tough. He's very resilient. He always comes in conditioned and ready to fight all 3 rounds, all 5 minutes of each round. So I just think I match up very well with Sadawad, and I think that this is a perfect fight for me to take my next step and build a bigger fan base. I don't have a ton of followers on Instagram and Twitter, so I'm going to look to kind of brand myself in this fight, and that's going to be my walkout. It's going to have its own brand. I'm going to make sure to take every advantage of this platform that I can. So you'll be hearing about some things I'm working on, and kind of on the side, an invention I came up with, and it will have an impact on MMA and sports. Nice. So you'll be hearing about that. I'll have a walkout that's kind of unique and branded to myself. So some of these things I hope that Bellator says, man, look at this guy. He's intelligent. He's, a decent-looking guy. Carries himself well. Let's get behind Zach Freeman. That's my goal this fight, is to get Bellator finally 100% fully committed to looking at me as one of their headline guys or someone that they can stand behind that represents their company well.
So what sponsors and what people would you like to thank for your help and support in your fighting?
Definitely want to say thank you to all my past sponsors from this last fight. So if you don't mind, could I just kind of
go for it?
Go ahead and read off some?
Yeah,
okay, give me 1 sec. So I will thank my sponsors. Give me 1 second. So first and foremost, Autoplex Extended Solutions. They do extend warranties for vehicles that their standard warranties expired. Also, I want to thank my team, St. Charles MMA. I want to thank Team Boggy, Enrico Boggy, that's who we're all belted under. He's a direct descendant, essentially. He was belted by Hickson Gracie, so I have a nice direct lineage. I also want to thank my team out in Colorado in Fort Collins. That's Trials Mixed Martial Arts. Jared Hardy out there and Ryan Schultz. They're awesome people, and I look forward to getting back out there training with you guys. I want to thank Decent Contracting and Installations. I want to thank the Nutrition Vixen, who is my personal dietitian. I want to thank Show Me Credit Solutions. They do credit repair, and they take care of people. They guide them on getting their credit scores up, and so they can buy a house or get an apartment and take that next step in life. I want to thank 212 Nightclub, Cove Logistics, GPO for Business. They're a group purchasing organization, so GPO for Biz again. I want to thank my company that I work for, Working Spaces. We're a furniture dealership, and we do design. So we're happy to help customers out there looking to move into a new office space. We will get you guys all taken care of and kind of lead you through the process. Also want to thank Vinyl Images. They do all my gear. Essentially, they do all my printing, my banner, But what they are is they're the world's best wrap company. So they wrap vehicles or they wrap trucks, whatever it is that needs wrapped. They're actually considered one of the best in the world.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, also just want to thank Mars Living Walls, which is a product out of Amsterdam. That's a product I represent, a manufacturer I represent, so thank you for their support. Want to thank Nakama Gym out in Harderwijk, Netherlands. That's the gym I like to go out to when I'm out in Holland. And then I want to say thank you to Ill Conduct. They're kind of an entertainment group, and they do Harley-Davidson stunt shows at dealerships and things like that. So if you're looking to get an impact on a weekend, get a lot at your dealership, Ill Conduct puts on amazing stunts, and they actually set a Guinness World Record, Cole Freeman did, for jumping his Harley-Davidson farther than anyone has jumped a Harley. So also, rest in peace to Nicky Hayden. He was a professional motorcycle rider, and he had passed away this year. So that'll do it. I appreciate you letting me give a shout out to my sponsors.
Excellent. It's our pleasure. We're glad to have you on the show. And before you go, how can fans learn more about you on social media?
On Instagram, it's at Alter Boy MMA. On Facebook, please give me a like and follow on Zach Freeman or Alter Boy MMA. And then on Twitter, same thing, Alter Boy MMA.
Definitely. We hope to have you back on in the future, like you said. We're excited to hear about your entrance and see all that coming up at that big event at Bellator 186.
All right. Well, thank you to yourself for your time and giving me a platform to talk about myself. I appreciate that.
Welcome.